So, here's some education. This is Steven Pinker, renowned scientist, renowned intellectual, renowned lefty. Well, there you are. A left wing kind of guy. Enlightenment boy. And listen to him talk, because I like him. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that insulting at all. That's who he is. He'll admittedly say that. But he's worth watching. I mean, he's totally worth watching, reading it. I mean, I don't always agree with certain takes he has on the science he presents, but he presents the science and then presents his take, which, I may or may not agree with 100%, but, I generally go, okay, because he's a legitimate scientist, research scientist.
Although in the last 10 years, globally, we've seen extreme poverty continue to decline. We've seen war decline after the blip from the Syrian civil war, which temporarily reversed the trend. We've seen movements like the legalization of gay marriage in the United States, the restrictions in the application of the death penalty. So there are a lot of these long-term movements that are continuing. And you also got to remember that in the 60s and 70s, for one thing, domestically, there were weekly bombings and riots with police shooting a dozen rioters a night. The Weathermen, the Black Liberation Armies, Bayanese Liberation Army.
I'm getting all of that too. Oh yeah, materially things are continuing to get better. I give you all of that.
And if you listen back, I've been watching the Apple TV series 1971, The Music Changed Everything.
Oh, cool.
Highly recommend it.
Okay.
It's a reminder of a lot of the political inanity of our generation and our older brothers and sisters who were Maoists, who were Marxists, who were violent insurrectionists, and not just in rhetoric, but there really was a lot of violence. There were bombings, there were judges whose heads were blown off.
Oh my God.
It was a pretty ugly time. And even in terms of, it's certainly true that there is no overall progressive force toward liberal democracy, and there's absolutely been a recession in the last decade in countries like Hungary and Turkey and the United States and Russia. On the other hand, if you look at the graph of number of democracies scaled by how democratic, how autocratic they are, we've backslid maybe to 2010. We have to remember that in the 1970s, there were only 33 democracies on Earth. Half of Europe was behind the Iron Curtain. Wow. Spain and Portugal were literally fascist dictatorships. All of Latin America, juntas, banana republics, military governments. Taiwan was a military dictatorship. South Korea was a military dictatorship. There has been some backsliding, but not back to the 1970s.
So that's the progress we've made since the 1970s. Just to recap, half of Europe was behind the Iron Curtain, Soviet Union. None of them want to go back there. They're not begging to get back in. The conditions in Latin America and South America were totally different than they are now. There's still problems, obviously, but and he also said that what was the other one? There was only 30 Democratic, 35 or 30 some Democratic states. Let's check that. So, countries. How many Democratic countries are there in the world? The index itself describes the intent to measure the states of democracy in 167 countries, of which 160 are sovereign states and 164 are UN member states. The index is based on 60 indicators grouped in 5 different categories measuring pluralism, civil liberties, and political culture. 96 out of 167 were democracies. So 96. So since the 70s, it's tripled. All right? The amount of democracies has tripled since the 70s. If you're in a democracy, then that's progress. Progressives. Anyways, that's my quick little video. Enjoy.